Welcome to How to Be a Person, a podcast about life with me, your host, Giuliano Grimaudo. Terry, how's it going?
Hey, Giuliano, great to be here with you.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you decided to come on to How to Be a Person. I really appreciate it. So, just a little bit of context, because you might not know this and somebody listening might not know, but every guest that I have on my podcast, I'm essentially trying to simulate my experience driving Uber. So I drove Uber for like over 10 years, and I would have random people get in my car, and we just would have the most amazing conversations, like with nothing prepared, obviously, right? They're just a stranger.
Sure.
And so this is what I do. I just have people on. I don't really know much. Sometimes I'll have like one or two little pieces of information. But I try not to like read into too much about the person. I just kind of want to have an organic conversation. Um, that being said, Terry, do you want to tell me about yourself? And hopefully our listeners, they'll hear about it as well.
Well, yeah, I've been in publishing for years, Giuliano. I've I've written more than 60 books for traditional publishers, and I've written for more than 50 publications,
Holy
magazines over
cow.
the years. So
Wait, you said you've written over 60 books?
yes, I have.
Wow. That's a lot of books.
It is. I I started in journalism and had the opportunity years ago to write my first book, and so I wrote a little children's book actually that
Okay.
came out in 1992 called "When I Grow Up, I Can Go Anywhere for Jesus." And so I wrote this children's book, and then that sort of opened the door for me to write other things. I've written biographies, how-to children's books, co-authored books, all kinds of stuff over the years that
Wow.
I've done. So
That's a really big deal. Like, so, I mean, you're saying like I know some of you said you were co-authored, but the ones that you've authored, like you specifically have written these books. Like, it's
I
not
have,
like, oh, wow. That's
yeah.
pretty impressive. You know, the only person I can think of that I know that's like publicly written a lot of books anywhere around that number is John Maxwell. Do you know John
Yeah,
Maxwell?
I do know John Maxwell. Yeah, he's written a lot of stuff. Yeah, absolutely. But he has help. He has co-authors, different
Mm-hmm.
people that help him on that. I've been the writer guy behind the scenes that have actually put my fingers on the keyboard and write this stuff. So at the
Interesting.
end of the day,
Interesting. Yeah, I don't know too much about his process. I just know like that's like his thing, right? Like he's written over 100 books or something like that.
he's
And
very prolific. Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
exactly. Prolific. That's the word for it. But it sounds like you've been very prolific as well. That's pretty amazing. You know what's funny about that? So in hearing about John Maxwell, like I thought, wow, that's kind of a really big deal. Like that someone would write that many books. And then I looked into a lot about publishing books, and some of it through a publisher, some of it self-publishing, but just the idea that if you publish a lot of books, this is kind of just like kind of just like anything else in life. If you do a lot of it, it's like you don't have to have like not all of them have to do amazing, but maybe hey, you have like one or two that do like really really well, and so you kind of have this almost like portfolio of books that you've written, and some do like really great and some are kind of on the lower end, whatever, but like overall it's like you're just like a prolific writer. Right, and you end
Yeah,
up getting
you
paid through that.
yeah, like we've built what we call like a body of work. So,
Mm,
you know, I mean it's something that I've done over and over through the years. And so it's not anything that happened overnight. People wonder how in the world you do that. It's pretty simple. You do it one book at a time, you know. And
yeah.
so uh, I've had a lot of crazy deadlines doing this kind of thing, but I'm one of these people that if somebody says they need a book done at a certain time and I sign up for it, then by golly, I'm going to deliver it. I mean,
Yeah.
I wrote Running on Ice, for example, for Vanetta Flowers, the first African American ever to win a gold medal in the Winter Olympics.
Okay.
She won it in the 2002 bobsled there in Salt Lake City. And they actually had a manuscript for that book, but they had hired an African American woman in Nashville to write that book, and
Hmm.
they delivered a terrible manuscript. I mean, who cares what it means to grow up and be black in Birmingham? I mean, that's how that book started. And so
Mm,
they needed somebody to write a bobsled book, which is
mm.
what I did. Um, I actually went to Salt Lake, rode the sled once, scared the daylights out of me, but I had to write her a book in 6 weeks. So
Wow.
they were actually out selling the book before they even had a manuscript, which is the backwards way of doing it, type thing.
Mm,
And they delivered the book. Uh, their deadline was to get the book out in February. And so whenever I see my African American friends, I always ask them, I said, do you buy a lot of books in February? And they look at me like I'm crazy, And I say, well, that's Black History Month. Don't you buy a lot of books in February? And they say no. And so they decided to publish this book in February of a non-Olympic year, which was a
mm.
mistake,
Sure.
because
Sure.
uh, people want to buy books about the Olympics during the
Yeah,
Olympic
when the
year.
Olympics are happening, right?
So, some editor dreamed up this scheme and it
Mm,
didn't work out all that well. I mean, the book did okay, but not like everybody expected it to do.
yeah. So I have a question. So in that scenario, what you did, would you be considered a ghostwriter in that scenario?
No, I was actually a what they call a co-author. My name did appear on the cover, and
Mm,
so I wasn't a ghost. Somebody that's a ghost, and I've done a few books that are like that. Your name
yeah.
doesn't appear on anything at all,
Yeah.
so they don't even know. They just think that person wrote the book. But
Yeah.
in this case, my name did appear on the
Oh,
cover of the book,
okay,
so I
interesting.
was like a co-author.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so what I'm curious of then is when you say 60 books you've written, does that include the ones that you've ghostwritten that people don't know that you wrote?
Yeah, it includes a few of those ghostwritten books. Yeah, I do have a few of
Interesting.
those. But there's children's books, there's biographies on people like Chuck Colson, Luis Palau, uh, Chuck Colson, a lot of people like that I've written those books too. So
Yeah, man, that's pretty interesting. I mean, I feel like most people never like people like want to write a book and never even write one, and you're like, I've written 60 of them. I think it's really impressive. So, um, like what do you is that like what you do now? Like you also like you continue to write books, or do you like help other people write books, or what?
I continue to write some books, not
Okay.
as much anymore. But one of the main things I'm doing now is I'm an acquisitions editor. In other words, I find the books that we publish in the publishing house, and
Mm,
this is actually the third publisher that I'm working for. I'm working at Morgan James Publishing. They're a New York publishing house, and we do around 200 books a year. And so I'm the guy that actually gets the manuscript, takes a look at it, sees if it's a fit, talks to the author, see if they're a fit for publishing with us, and then I tell my colleagues about it, get a contract, negotiate the contract with them, all that kind of
interesting.
thing. Yeah.
Interesting. So I feel like people who listen to my show, right? It's called How to Be a Person. I feel like anybody who is like kind of focused on growth, like they're like thinking about the future, they're trying to see how they can improve. I feel like they are readers. And also they are the type of people who probably feel like maybe they have a book in them, right? Like a
Sure.
book
Sure.
that they want to write. So I'm curious, like what advice or just thoughts or anything you have for somebody who's listening that feels like they eventually would like to write a book.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. What I would encourage them to do, I mean, everybody wants to write a book, and
Hmm.
books are permanent and all that kind of thing. But the reality is, a lot of them, particularly if you self-publish, don't sell, so you
Hmm.
don't really have much impact with what you do.
Yeah.
Um, and if you sell 5,000 copies of a book during the lifetime of the book, that's a good number in our business.
Yeah.
But so I encourage people to get started. One of the best ways for them is to write for magazines. They
Mm.
don't even think about doing that, but
Yeah.
most of these magazines will take personal experience stories, and I mean, you driving as an Uber driver, for example, that would be
Yeah.
a great little story. I'm sure you have some story
Oh,
of
yeah.
some strange experience that you had
Sure.
that you could put together in about 1,200 words. And a magazine would take that, they would publish that. And because those of us in publishing, it's kind of a catch 22. We're looking for people to publish that have been published. And so
Mm,
part of the way you get published is in a magazine.
mm.
And in a magazine, it's very easy to reach 100,000, 200,000, half a million people in
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
And you're working with a short piece of writing as opposed to a 50 to 100,000 word piece in a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
So you also learn in magazine writing, you learn how to write for a particular reader, uh, how to have a good title, how to have a good start,
Mm.
middle, and the end.
Yeah.
And you know, if you write say 15 or 20 magazine articles on a particular topic and subject area,
Mm.
and you put those together, that could be a book.
Yeah.
You
You've
know,
already
you
written
know,
your book.
you have people just don't think creatively about it, how
Yeah.
to put it together and
Yeah.
make it work for them.
Yeah, that's super interesting though. I think a lot of people probably don't think about that as a potential path, but part of what I like about that is I could see how if someone wants to write a book, I can see that being like a really daunting thing and probably like something that would prevent them from doing it in the first place. But I think if they have kind of like a stepping like these stepping stones to writing the book, like that could be really helpful for someone. It's so interesting. I've never really heard anybody describe that as like a potential path for someone if they wanted to write a book.
Yeah, and you know, there's a lot of people blogging out there, for
Yeah.
example. In the business, if you take your blog posts, which are random kind of thoughts,
Hmm.
if you organize that into a book, in the publishing business, we call that a book, is what that is.
A book.
And and I actually did one of those a
Okay.
while back. I have a blog on the writing life that I started years ago, and so I took those random thoughts. It's a lot of work to do this, to organize them into
Yeah.
different chapters, write
Yeah, I can
transitions
imagine.
and everything. And so I published this as a self-published book that I did years ago called Jumpstart Your Publishing Dreams.
Mm.
Uh, but now that book, I brought that over to Morgan James. So now people can get that all kinds of places. It's widely available out there.
Okay. Okay. So when someone so if someone wants to write a book, right? And you said like in a publishing house, you're essentially looking like is it a really big deal whether or not someone has already been published? Like that determines whether or not you even look at their work in the first place?
Well, it's not the essential, but they
Hmm.
if they have, then we're much more interested in their work. And
Sure.
in the publishing business too, we have this tool. It's called a book proposal that you can write that
Mm.
really pitches your idea.
Hmm.
And when I worked at my first publishing house, I'd never. This is the third publisher that I'm working for. So when I was at my first publishing house, I was pretty frustrated because I wasn't getting the right kind of submissions from people. So
Mm.
I wrote this book back then called Book Proposals That Sell 21 Secrets to Speed Your Success. Now, the book's gotten out there. It's got like 155-star reviews. It's helped a lot of people get an advance, get a literary agent, get a publishing deal, all that kind of thing. But what's happened over the years is publishing has changed a lot through the years. So a lot of my information was dated and
Mm.
not any good anymore. So a couple of years ago, I wrote this revised edition of this book that's out there, and people can get the entire book from me, the entire ebook, if they go to bookproposals.ws, and that's where they can put their first name and email address in, and they'll get the whole book from me for free.
Wow.
Well, why would I do that? I do that because we've learned at Morgan James that if somebody gets that ebook from me and starts to read that, there's a high probability that they're going to turn and buy the print copy of the book.
Mm.
So those free ebooks really drive print book sales. And I believe everybody that wants to write a book should do a book proposal as like one of the first steps, whether they're
Mm.
writing fiction or children's books or nonfiction, whatever it is,
Mhm.
because that's essentially your business plan. it
Mm.
tell it says, hey, this is who I'm writing for, this is how I'm going to do it, this is what the competition is, this is why me, this is what I'm going to do to sell the book. All those kind of details are in that book proposal.
Interesting. Yeah, so I've learned a little bit about self-publishing, about like book proposals, a lot of that over the last maybe year or two. I'm in the middle of writing a book right now, and I've published one before and was self-published, and so it's interesting to be able to have a conversation with you because I'm in the process of writing my second book right now. But and it's funny because I didn't like seek you out. We just kind of got connected and it was like, oh, that's
Sure.
perfect. So it's really interesting. What I'm curious of, because I have, even though I haven't used AI to like create my material, I've definitely used it as a tool to take the material I've created and like to assist me in getting my book made. So I'm curious, like coming from someone who is like you were at a publishing house, like what's up with AI when it comes to like book publishing right now?
Well, we've got you got to be careful with it because you don't want a robot to really write your stuff for you, but
Yeah.
it can help you on the research, the analysis of your competition. Say there's a book that's very similar to yours but different,
Mm.
it can help you analyze that, that kind of thing. But yeah, it's a growing part of our business. I think one of the ways that AI is going to help, it hasn't yet, but uh, in the whole audiobook area, I understand Apple is
Mm.
very close to releasing something that can go directly from text to an audiobook that will go
Mm.
into Audible, for example. And
Mm.
because I mean, everybody loves audiobooks.
Yeah.
I love audiobooks, but the reality is, what hardly anybody talks about is they're very expensive to produce them, to
Sure.
make them,
Sure.
time consuming for to get a reader,
Yeah.
uh, get it all corrected, all that kind of thing.
Yeah.
So if there's an automated way for that to happen, that will help us. So like at Morgan James, where I work, we've been in business 20 years. We've produced, we sold 20 million books, 6,000 titles, but our audiobooks, I mean, we may make $4,000 a year on our
Mm.
audiobooks. It's not a very big part of what we do
Yeah.
because it's so expensive to do it. But
Yeah.
if we had an inexpensive way of bringing that
Uh,
content into audio through AI, that would be terrific.
yeah. So, you know what's interesting is I've taken so there's like some websites that have kind of like an AI voice thing that'll like read your stuff out loud, and I've tested them out before, and it's surprising how good they are. Like if you plug in a paragraph of something you've written, a lot of times it actually really surprised me how well it got like the inflection properly, like almost as if you know how like when you used to, I mean, I feel like this stuff has been around for a very long time, right? Like I
Right,
remember like on my old like Windows, like you could plug stuff in and make it talk, but it would always just like it would never sound right. You know what I mean? It would
right,
always be like
right.
99% uploaded. Like it would never sounded right. And then now like when you plug something in, it speaks with inflection as if it understands what it's saying, right? Like it'll it puts the emphasis on the right stuff as if it's read the whole paragraph already and like knows where you're going with it. And I'm like, and of course there's still times where it's not as good, right? You're like, oh, okay, like clearly that's AI or whatever. But it's surprising how good it's gotten. I didn't think about that as like that could just be a thing in the future. Like why not? Like you could like literally instantly turn a book into an audiobook that way if they like really
Yeah,
dial it in.
and that would give you another vehicle, another way to get your book out there into the market.
Yeah.
It'd be great. So yeah, there's a lot going on in the publishing space. That's for sure.
Yeah, so true, so true. You know, one of the things I did, well, I mean, I might as well just talk about it. So I have a course that I made. It's called Habit Hacks, and I made it a few years ago. And it's basically just about like just kind of like getting rid of all the fluff and stuff around hacks or around habits, and just like this is what you need to do if you want to implement a new habit. And it's a course that I made. And so what I did recently was take the transcript of the course and plug it into AI and have it read it and then be like, okay, turn this into an outline for a book because that's the one of the books I'm writing right now. And so
Sure.
I it took it like just read the whole transcript and then turned that into a book outline. And I was like, this is so cool that like it can just understand it and then organize it into something that like I can then take and write my book with, you know?
Wow. Wow. No, I haven't used it. I haven't used anything like that. That's pretty incredible. So
Well,
yeah.
that's part of the reason why I ask is because I do think that I mean, especially after doing that myself, like just very quickly, you know, just with like Chat GPT, like it's not like it's a special tool made for that, and like just on my own, kind of like, oh, let me just download the transcript and plug it in here, and like how great it was that when it came out, I was like, holy cow, like this is a big deal because like it really, I could very much see it changing the entire like industry around books. And like for me, I'm using it in a way that I feel like is ethical in the sense that I'm plugging in my stuff, right? Like I said, it was like
Right.
my transcript from the course that I made, and I plug it in there. And so that, and then it's helping me based on the information I put in there. But like, I could see people just going in there and being like, write me a book about XYZ with like, and kind of lean it in this direction and use this style of voice or whatever. And it's kind of like scary to think about, you know?
Yeah, the danger with that wide open is that you go into plagiarism and open yourself up to lawsuits and all kinds of crazy potential there. So yeah, you have to be careful with it. That's for sure.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, So I feel like when we connected, is there a newer book that you wrote other than this one you said you revised a
There
couple years
is,
ago?
there is. I wrote this book, 10 Publishing Myths,
Okay.
and this book I really wrote to help authors have realistic expectations about what happens when their books get published.
Yeah.
Because what I find from talking to authors all the time is that there's so much of the publishing process that's outside of our control as
Mm,
authors, and we can't really predict what's going to happen out there. But there are some things that you can predict, and so I wrote this to try to help authors have more realistic ideas of what can really happen with their book. And so I want people to go to publishingoffer.com. That's where they can get the book from me for only $10. Includes the shipping, along with over $200 worth of bonuses there. So, because a lot of times these authors don't have very realistic expectations. So, like the first publishing myth that I have is that I will make a lot of money with my book. Whether they're self-publishing or whether they're going with a traditional publisher, that's that's pretty much a fantasy,
yeah.
as far as that's really going to happen. It's not. It's almost like the Kevin Costner Field of Dreams movie. It's almost
Mm,
like if you build it, they will come. They
you're
they
like,
think that
no.
if they write the book, it will sell and I will make a lot of money. No, that's not true.
Mm,
So but there are things that people can do to encourage book sales. My wake up moment in this whole area myself was in 2007. I was running a little literary agency in Scottsdale, Arizona, and Mark Victor Hansen, the co-author on Chicken Soup for the Soul,
okay.
invited me to come to Los Angeles. He was having this event called Mega Book Marketing University, and so I went out there. I took pitches from people during the event, but I also sat there with 400 people and listened to all the different speakers. Now, at that point in my life, I'd written about 50 books for traditional publishers. So they were paying me advances. They were making pretty books. They were getting them in the bookstores,
Yeah.
all that kind of thing. But when you're in publishing, about once a year or sometimes quarterly, the publisher will send you a financial statement about how your book is doing, how it's selling.
Mm,
All of mine back then were in the minus category. And so
really?
I couldn't figure out, I must have been doing something wrong. What was I doing wrong not to sell books? And during
All
that event,
50?
yeah, oh, they none of them were really selling very well. They were all, I
Whoa.
mean, they paid me in advance. Say they paid me $10,000, $20,000.
Hmm.
Well, if they pay in advance, it has to earn that money back
Yeah.
before you make any more.
Yeah.
And all mine were in the minus category.
They
And
hadn't
so
even made the money back that they had
no,
advanced you.
no, they hadn't
Wow.
made the advance back. And so, but during that event, it was almost like I woke up. I'd been asleep and I woke up because I understood how little I was doing myself to be
Mm,
telling people about my book. Sure, I had a terrywhalen.com website, but I was doing little else in order to be able to do that.
yeah.
Now, one of the speakers at this event was Jack Canfield, the other co-author on Chicken Soup for the
Yeah.
Soul. And Jack has written this book called The Success Principles.
Mm.
What does it really take to be successful? And so the very first success principle says that I will take 100% responsibility for my own success. Now, none of us want to take 100% responsibility. We want somebody else to do it. Some publisher, some editor, some
Yeah.
marketing person, please, somebody other than
Yeah.
ourselves. But I decided during this conference that I was going to take 100% responsibility for my own success. So I started to blog. I've been blogging every week since 2004. And my blog actually has over 1,700 entries in it now. There's a lot of
Wow.
content in that blog.
Wow.
About a year ago, I found an article about the top 27 content producers out there. I had Seth Godin, Ryan Holiday, Jeff
Yeah.
Goins, people like that. My name was one of the 27
What,
because
really?
because of the volume of
Yeah.
material that I have. I'm putting it out every
Yeah.
week. So that's the kind of thing that anybody can do out there.
Mm.
Jack Canfield and Mark Victor Hansen talked about their own experience with the Chicken Soup for the Soul books, and people have
Mm.
forgotten this. I mean, those books were rejected over 160 times. That's a lot of rejection. Those
Holy
guys,
cow.
they couldn't find anybody to publish the book. They
Wow.
finally found a little publisher in Florida to publish the first Chicken Soup for the Soul books. And they told their publisher they were going to sell 1 million books in the first year. And their publisher laughed at them. They never sold 1 million copies of anything. I thought that was ridiculous. It took them a year and a half to sell their first 1 million books.
Wow.
But these guys talk about how what they did, they practiced what they called the rule of 5.
Okay.
So they got up every day and they did 5 things to be telling people about their book. So they did a radio show or a newspaper article or a guest blog post or a live event or something to be telling people.
Mm.
So that's the kind of thing that it takes for all of us.
Yeah.
There is no real path to book sales and success and all that thing.
Mm.
But there is a way that any of us we can be consistent, we can persevere, we can try to find the right place for us. Maybe it's podcasting, I don't know what it is, but it's different for every person. And you just have to keep working at that to find the right path for you.
Yeah. Wow. That's so interesting. Well, and I think it's really valuable to share because, like you said, I think a lot of authors have this idea that they're just going to write a book and all of a sudden they're going to be making a bunch of money. And that's not the case. It's just like any other business, right? It's essentially like it's like when you write a book, like you've built an asset, but like the asset still needs to be like taken care of. And like, you know what I mean? Like it makes me think about like if you've built, like for example, if you built like a property with rental units, it's like you still have to rent the units out. You know what I mean?
You
Like
do.
you don't just get to build it. Like you have to rent the units out and you have to manage the tenants and like everything involved in that, right? You have to maintain the property. And I think it's the same thing when you write a book. Like it's not just like a one and done thing. It's an asset that can produce money over time, but like you have to, take care of the asset.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So that's why I ignored LinkedIn and social media for a while, but that's why I'm active on there.
Mm,
Uh, I have 175,000 followers on X, Twitter. I have 19,500 connections on LinkedIn, and I post on those things all the time.
mm,
I have a system that I've developed that doesn't dominate my life. I spend about 30 minutes a day on it, so it's not like I kill myself to do all these posts that I put out there. But
yeah.
I'm telling people about the benefits and the the reasons they need to know about some of these things that I've written out there. And if you give them those benefits, uh, they're eventually gonna be interested in by your book. I mean, one of the things that we've proven in the publishing business is that it takes uh, you know 9, 10, 12 times somebody has to hear about your
Mm.
book before they actually decide to buy it. And so part of what you're doing in those social media posts
Mm,
is giving yourself that exposure for your book so that
yeah.
people finally go, oh, I ought to buy that book.
Mm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It really does. Well, Terry, I feel like we covered so much in such a short period of time. I do appreciate you coming on. Is there anything in particular that you feel like you want people to, like, listeners to take away from this, like from you coming on today?
Yeah, I just want people to understand that they can do it.
Mm,
There is I see the world filled with opportunity out there.
mm,
I mean, I heard Marcus Duhay, who just stepped back from being the CEO of Penguin Random House, the biggest publisher in the world, say that we live in one of the greatest times in human history since Gutenberg invented the printing press. And it's really true.
mm,
There's a lot of opportunity out there, but you as an individual have to be knocking on those doors, pitch yourself, seize the opportunity, write your book proposal, um, and in the publishing business, even those pitches. I mean, you hear no a lot, when you do
mm.
that kind of thing, but you have to understand that all of us that are in the publishing business, we're looking for the next bestseller. We're looking for the
Yeah,
diamond in the rough.
yeah.
So even if you don't get a response, I've been in some of the top literary agencies and publishers in New York City, for example. And when I'm with those people, every one of them is asking me, "Okay, Terry, where's the next best-selling book?" And it's because it shows that if even if they don't answer you, they're reading
Mm,
those emails that you've sent. They're looking for that diamond in the rough out there. So people should just seize the opportunity and
yeah.
keep going.
Yeah, well, I appreciate you sharing too. Like, right, you've got like these books. You're like, how to write a better book proposal, and here's some things to think about. Like, I think. So here's what's interesting. It's like you said, authors want to write books, and publishers want to publish books, right? Like that's the thing. And it's like if you can see. Here's what's funny. I think a lot of us live in this kind of like fantasy world where we want things to just like happen perfectly, but like ultimately like a publisher is going to publish a book because they think it's going to sell. And so if you can get them to think it's going to sell, then they will publish your book. Right? And so it makes
Yeah, it's
sense to like
kind of a circular type of reasoning that you're
yeah,
doing.
yeah,
Yeah.
but that's the truth of it. Is like so if you can because I think a lot of people don't like to talk about sales, right? Like they don't like the idea of selling or they feel like, well, that's not authentic. And it's like, look, that's not what this is about. Like ultimately, if you want to make an impact and you believe that the way that you will make that impact is by writing a book and people reading it, then that means that you have to make it in such a way that the people who publish the books are going to want to publish it and that the people who read the books are going to want to read it. Otherwise, like you said before, you don't make an impact because no one's picking up the book and nobody's opening it and nobody's reading it.
That's right. It's got to have a good foundation. It's got to have good stories. And I tell every author, you're the person that has the greatest passion, the greatest desire
Mm,
for your book. Uh, I mean, publishers, sure, they have an investment in it, but their investment is divided. I mean, like,
mm,
look at Morgan James. I mean, we publish 200 books a year, so
yeah.
we we're divided on that passion. But you, as the author, have a lot of passion, so you ought to take that passion and keep that going and move that forward to reach your audience out there. Um, for the endorsements for this book, I was gathering those, and Alice Kreider, who's an acquisitions editor, when she sent her endorsement back to me, she said, "Terry, you're missing the 11th myth." I'm like, "Okay, Alice, I'll bite. What's the 11th myth?" She said, "Well, the 11th myth should be that if I send my book to Oprah Winfrey, she'll book me on her show." And I'm like, "Well, yeah, that's a pretty big myth there." And so what I decided to do is I decided to write that chapter, and I give that chapter away. So if your audience goes to terrylinks.com/11th myth, 11th myth, takes you to a page where you put in your name and your email address, and then you can get this for free from me, because it's I want people to understand more about how the publishing world works, and I want them to be successful.
Yeah.
That's part of the reason in this book, 10 Publishing Myths, that I did. In every chapter, I have a myth buster action, an MBA,
Mm,
because I want people to understand that they have to take their own actions that they can take to, well, no matter what way they publish, whether traditional or self-publish or
hmm.
independent publishing, whatever they do, because so much of the publishing process is outside of our control. I mean, I'll talk to authors all the time, and they'll say, "Well, I build my stuff on YouTube, or I build my stuff on Facebook." Well, I don't control YouTube. I don't control Facebook.
Hmm.
As a matter of fact, I could knowingly or unknowingly get kicked off of those platforms tomorrow,
True.
So you don't want to build your house on what you call a rented platform. You
Hmm.
want to build it on something that you can control, your own blog, your own website, your own newsletter. All those things you can take control of. And so that's what I really encourage people to do in this book, is to take their own actions,
Mm.
uh, no matter how they publish their book. And then it can really get out there into the world and do the kinds of things that they want it to do.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, hey Terry, I appreciate you coming on. I feel like you've shared so much value, so I do really appreciate that. I know I learned a lot, and hopefully anybody listening, if they're ever thinking about getting into publishing, that they'll definitely pick up your books, because it seems like you've got a lot more value to add in there as well.
Well, I appreciate the opportunity, and I want people to reach out to me. That's why I have my email address right in my X Twitter profile there, because I want people to reach out to me, and any way I can help them, I'd love to do that.
Very nice, very nice. So if they want to connect with you over on X, what's your handle there?
Uh, Terry Whalin,
Terry
complicated.
Whalen. Just your name. Wow. Amazing. Perfect. All right, Terry. Thanks so much for coming on. I appreciate you.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thanks for being here. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review or share it with someone who'd appreciate it. For everything I have to offer, visit howtobeaperson.co.